Hello everyone, I'm Denise from the University of Sewing. We've got another chat talking about Lizzy Albright and Granny's 1930 sampler book. This is a sampler pattern book that we are working our way through slowly but surely. For those of you that are curious, we've got 42 blocks in this sampler pattern. This time we're going to talk about block number 19, but let's take a minute to kind of revisit some of the ones that we've done before. We're standing in front of our billboard where we've been hanging them so we can all enjoy them and get a little inspiration. Some of these are pretty simple. I'm sure there are some that you're familiar with. There's an Ohio star, a nice churn dash, a square in a square, and then of course we've got the fun little Scotty dog and some Dresden plate. I wouldn't say this book is a skill builder because it doesn't progress. It throws in different skills for each block throughout the entire book. So maybe you get an easy one and then maybe the next one is a little more challenging, which is kind of the case for the one we're going to talk about today. This is definitely one of the easier ones. But one of the cool things about doing a sampler is you get to try all these fun different techniques and styles, and maybe you find a couple that you absolutely love and you do a whole quilt out of them. Maybe you find a couple that you think, yeah, I'm not so wild about that one, and maybe you come back to it later, or maybe you decide this one is definitely not for me. But it's a great way to try them kind of on the small scale, and it's a great way to learn some new skills and some different techniques. So even if you've done paper piecing before, maybe there's something in the book that suggests you do it a little differently and you learn a tip or a trick. And of course, that's why we go through each block together. I always share with you what's working for me and what hasn't, so that maybe I can save you a little frustration because I get inspired by what you guys are doing also. And speaking of what you're doing, I just want to give you a reminder that we are almost halfway through, and we are going to have a little mini halfway celebration when we get to block number 21. So be sure that you are sharing the blocks that you have done on our website. For each one that you share, your name will be entered into a drawing for a fun little prize. The website, if you're curious, is universityofsewing.com. Doesn't get much easier than that. So let's talk about our block this time. Again, we're talking about block number 19. And this book has so many fun things in it. 19 is actually just a nice little rail fence. Very classic block. This is a fantastic block for beginners. And it's also a fun one for those that are a little more advanced and just want to maybe play a little more with fabrics. Your fabric choice is kind of important in this one. You can certainly mix up your colors, but really to get this nice effect, you're going to want to mix up your lights and then grade them to the darker fabrics. The pattern, the directions do ask you to cut your strips to 2 inches wide. And you see then you're going to sew these along here. Once they're all sewn together, you're going to cut blocks into 4.5 inches. But sometimes what I found is the really easy blocks, we think we know it, so we just kind of zip right through it and maybe don't read all the details in the directions. Anybody else ever do that? So that's what I did with this one because it's an easy block, right? I knew how it went together. But those 2-inch strips, later in the pattern directions, it tells you to cut them down to 1.5-inch strips, which I neglected to read the first time through. And this is what I ended with. These are not squares. This will not work in this block. So at some point, these little pieces will find a home doing something else, maybe on a pieced backing for this quilt. Who knows, maybe they'll get thrown in just as a surprise somewhere. So my suggestion is A, read the directions all the way through. And after you do that, you just may want to cut your strips to 1.5 inches to begin with. I'm not sure you need to do the 2 inches. It seems a little wasteful. Sometimes the trimming down I think is really helpful and very useful. This isn't one of those that I think you really need to do that, so you could probably just go ahead and do the 1.5-inch strips. So when you do that properly, you will get these 4-inch pieces. It's actually 4.5-inch unfinished. And then of course you're going to sew that to its companion side. And this is basically a 4-patch block. And then we're going to put it together. Let's move our book over here. And this is really as simple as it is, guys. That's how it goes together. Get those threads out of the way so you can see a little bit. But again, play with your fabrics, play with the color choices, lights to darks, mix it up. You get this fun little cross happening here. And then this was This was practice block number 2. And this, of course, was the finished one that we'll hang up here on the wall and we'll go into our finished project. We've talked a little bit before about doing those practice blocks. Sometimes you think, yeah, I don't need to do it, but it's kind of fun just to have the extra one too. So what do you need for this block this week? Not a whole lot, not anything particularly special. You need your Granny's 1930 sampler book, of course, and we do have these in the shop. This book, if you're curious, is based on a fun little story about Lizzy Albright by the very well-known quilter Ricky Timms and his friend Kat Bowser. This is a fun one to do as a read aloud, or if you're just looking for some easy summer reading for yourself, this would be a great one too. You don't need that one to do the block, but it's a fun read. You do need some good rotary cutting rulers. Most of us quilters have a nice rectangle that we use, and probably also a square, something to trim things up, make them nice and square. You're also going to need, of course, your rotary cutter and a nice sharp blade. All of those are available on our website, universityofsewing.com. Now, let's talk a little bit about the next one that we're going to do. We talked that some of them were pretty simple. This is really a good, basic, very beginner-friendly block. The next one that we're going to do is a little more challenging, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little nervous about this one, so we'll see. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what we're going to look at. This is block number 20, and this is called Pickle Dish, and it's beautiful. But does that look a little intimidating? We'll have to see. Now, I will tell you these are paper pieced, so all those little bitty triangles, that's not going to be too terribly bad. We do have some curved piecing that we're going to do. And because our blocks finish at only 8 inches square, that makes that curved piecing a little more challenging because it is a pretty small curve that you're trying to fit that in. So make sure that you check back for block number 20, and I give you my tips and tricks and what worked and what didn't work. Hopefully I'll have a lot more for you of what worked. Either way, be sure to join us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying what we're doing, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.